I remember I felt like I just wanted to cry because my backpack straps were hurting me so much. It was so heavy. I felt like I just needed to sit down. I was like, I don't understand. I feel like I'm going to die from like carrying this pack. It's so heavy. And eventually I feel like we came around to the realization that I was maybe carrying like between 2.5 to 5 pounds of chocolate milk.
2.5 pounds of chocolate milk
per person.
So you were at just under 8 pounds of milk.
Hi, I'm Carrie.
And I'm Molly.
And you're listening to the
Two Sisters on Adventures podcast.
We are doing right now the Oregon Sampler Pack, as I like to call it. So we've already talked about our time on the Timberline Trail. If you've missed that one, feel free to go back and listen to the episodes. But now we're going to rewind all the way back to a year in the olden days. 2021. This was kind of the beginning of our like big backpacking trip era. And so the summer before we had gone on one backpacking trip, right? No, we got on 2 backpacking trips. Each of them had been one night. And, you know, we'd just gotten all our backpacking gear together. So we had just figured out even how to set up our tent. And we'd figured out how to, you know, use the bathroom outside. And we figured out all those little things that kind of have to come together to learn to backpack. We never had anyone who really taught us how to backpack other than ourselves. I read a lot of articles on the internet about different things, and if I had a question, I'd write it down, and then I'd go research it later. And so we, this summer, had been on a 2-night backpacking trip so far, so 2 nights, 3 days. This was also a time when I was working night shift. I was going week on, week off. And so basically this summer we wanted to do a lot of big backpacking. So we had set it up where basically every other week when I was off, we were going to be gone for kind of building days on backpacking trips. So the first week that I had off, we were going to go on a 3-day, 2-night backpacking trip in the North Cascades. Then the next week we wanted to go on a 5-day backpacking trip. And then the one that we were kind of going to culminate our summer with was going to be a 7 or 8-day backpacking trip.
Yeah. And so I was working a job at the time where I had Wednesdays off every week. And so
Thursdays.
Oh, my apologies. Yeah. Funny. Thursdays off every week. And so what I would do is, it was awesome. My boss would let me swap my days off. So I would take off a Friday one week and a Monday the next, and I'd still work my full schedule. So every other weekend I would get a 4-day weekend when Carrie had her 7 days off. So
this was just in the summer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it was really a fun progression because it made the summer fly right by, but every other week we were doing this backpacking adventure, and like Carrie mentioned, we had kind of a stepwise approach where we were going to do longer days and bigger trails. So this trail in the Wallowas was in the middle of that progression right before we did our longest trail to date. But when we went to the Wallowas,
not to this date, but to that date.
When we went to the Wallowas, it was about to be our longest trail that we had done in our time backpacking.
And so to be honest, throughout this podcast series on the Wallowas, we will probably say that we did some things and you'll be like, whoa, that's not stuff that you're supposed to do. We definitely made some mistakes, honestly, probably in like the realm of leave no trace. And there are some things that we just learned, like this was a trip where I chose to bring a pair of shorts I'd never like worn before, but for some reason I was like, I don't want to wear the shorts that I have. And so I borrowed a pair from Molly and they did not fit me. Like, straight up, she would always be going behind me up an incline and she'd be like, I can just see like so much of your behind, which when I walked around on flat surfaces at home before, like for the 20 minutes before we left, they were totally fine. So it's like, I learned, don't probably commit to wearing the same pair of shorts for 5 days if you've never worn them hiking even one time. And also, it was funny because like another thing that I learned that I didn't know I was going to regret is if you wear the same outfit for 5 days and you don't bring an outfit to ride home in the car in, big mistake. It's so gross. So there are a lot of like little mistakes and bigger mistakes that we made along the way. But I feel like when you are learning to backpack, sometimes you just have to get out there and make those mistakes. And it's not like they were major or like life-threatening, but it's just like sometimes you have to just learn by doing. And so we did.
And this is one where we also had the opportunity to learn about how AllTrails can be so off when it comes to mileage. We Carrie will go into kind of how we planned this trip in the Wallowas, but we also used a route on AllTrails to kind of help us plan out some of the campsites and such. And I'm pretty sure the AllTrails map said it was going to be, I think it was like 48 or 50 miles. And in reality, it was 59 miles. So we had the opportunity to experience the like, oh, if AllTrails is off by even like, 2 miles a day, that adds up big time if you're going to be out there for 5 days. So it was kind of just interesting, the elements where we were learning. And once again, a 60-mile trail, we'd never done it before. And it was kind of part of our progression when it comes to learning how to backpack.
And this honestly was such a formative trail, I think, for us, just in terms of like, learning do's and don'ts. And I just think, like, it's one of those things where I'm not ashamed of any of the mistakes we made because we didn't know any better and we got to learn from them. And the only way you're never going to make a mistake is if you never go out and do anything.
Honestly.
So, I mean, it's probably would be a lot easier if we just sat there and were like, oh, people did stuff wrong from like the comforts of our home. But we actually went out and did it and we had such a good time.
And honestly, I have such a big smile on my face because I feel like this was the first of many backpacking epics.
Yeah.
Like we'd had good stories from trails in the past, but when you're out there for 2 or 3 days max, there's only so many things that can happen. Mm-hmm. And I feel like this trail, we came back just like brimming with stories, funny ones, scary ones, just like so many things happened. And it's fun to reflect on even, at this point, almost 3 years later?
Yeah.
So
I'm still so just have so much love in my heart for this trip. And another thing that's fun about this trip is we're going to introduce you to one of our most longtime backpacking friends. Rachel, she comes on like so many backpacking trips with us. And one thing that's super fun about her is she was always just like ready to get up and go. And this summer we were going to do a really crazy backpacking trip. Didn't end up doing it because of fires, heat, all that stuff. But we invited her like the day beforehand on a different backpacking trip because we found out she had the day off. And she asked us, she was like, I don't usually do this, but what am I going to expect mileage wise? And it just made me laugh because I feel like normally she'd just be like, I'm in. And then we'd be like, so we're going to be slapping you with like 50-mile, 5-day. The elevation's crazy. It'll be a 6-hour drive beforehand to the trailhead. But anyway, she just has always added so much fun to our adventures as well.
And Rachel, I feel like she has the insight into like what it's like to backpack with us really well, almost better than anyone else.
That's why we can't let her come on the podcast.
Exactly. To the point where I remember, it's Carrie and I, we get along really well most of the time, but in stressful situations, we're sisters. So sometimes we act like sisters. Yeah. And one time I remember Rachel, she's like, y'all fight like an old married couple.
I was like, well, imagine if you've lived together for like longer than most married couples.
So it was she just like knows our dynamic so well and has been just such a fun adventure partner to just throw into the mix and just, I don't know, just go wild.
So welcome to the Wallowas.
Exactly.
So this was a trip that actually kind of came together in basically a couple of days. We'd already talked to Rachel. We talked to Rachel about how we wanted to do something in the Wallowas. I actually think she brought them up first.
I think she did, yeah.
And then we had done something in the North Cascades a couple weeks before, and I feel like we were just so in love with them that we were kind of like, we're going to just always go back to the North Cascades. And so I think we kind of stopped planning anything in the Wallowas. But then all of a sudden there was like a bad weather forecast or fire or something up in the North Cascades. And all of a sudden all of our options were super limited. And then we were like, well, back to plan B, which was originally plan A, the Wallowas.
Yeah. And oh my gosh.
So for those of you listening, we just had a bit of a studio malfunction where our backdrop just fell off of the what would the poster board be?
Yeah, it's a poster board
that we've taped together using some ducky duct tape. So that was kind of funny and unexpected.
Gosh.
So
I don't even know. I was talking about the North Cascades.
Yeah, I think we were just saying we were going to do the Wallowas.
Oh, so something that was interesting about the Wallowas to us is that there's a lot of granite there. And we'd done the enchantments, I think, twice at this point. And something that's beautiful about that area is just all of the different granite peaks. And we'd heard about the Sierras. We'd never been there before, but we'd heard that, the Wallowas, I think they called them Oregon's like Alps of Oregon, and that they're just supposed to be really scenic. And so I think we kind of didn't give the Wallowas as much credit as they deserved, but we also were really curious to see what it was like. And so then when the opportunity presented itself, we were finally like, yeah, let's do it.
And let's go.
Let's do it.
So we decided to do it, and it was kind of last minute, and I had been researching other things for a different trip, but we had no itinerary. And when I worked nights, sometimes in the summertime, it's a little bit less busy at the hospital. And it just happened to be a night that was very slow, which is a word I never say in the hospital environment.
Or quiet.
I never say quiet. Anyway, I'm not very superstitious, but I am a little stitious, as Michael Scott would say. Anyway, so I used that night to plan it. And I feel like it's so funny because I feel like I really stitched together this itinerary. I was looking at maps and mileages and distances and what I thought would work for us. And then I feel like all of a sudden I got a text from Molly that was like, what about this loop? And it was the exact same thing that I had just like meticulously sewn together for us.
Yeah.
So we figured out our itinerary, and then the plan was basically we're going to leave at the crack of dawn, drive all the way there.
It was a 6-hour drive for us from Salem. And then we would start day 1 on the trail like halfway through the day because we were going to do a 6-hour drive in the morning.
Yeah.
So, the very first day we were going to go up to Aneroid Lake.
Which, according to my itinerary, was supposed to be 5.8 miles from the trailhead, but in reality ended up being 7.5. Why? Because AllTrail's mileage is BS.
Honestly, I don't think we've been on many trails where
AllTrails was our
where it matches up. And so to fast forward just a little bit, we were on the trail and already like the AllTrails would say you've gone 4 miles and we'd only gone like in
3.
reality like 3.
Yeah.
And so throughout the course of our trip, I had to do this AllTrails variable, a mathematic equation where I would multiply by the actual number and then we would figure out our actual itinerary for the day. And it was always consistently 2 or 3 miles longer.
Which is like, seems like it's not that big of a deal. But when you look at the trip and when I add up the mileage that I had gotten that we were going to do versus the mileage we actually did, I mean, there's like 5, so 1.5 plus 2.5.
Oh no.
I don't know if I want people to listen to me.
Maybe we should not do this.
Do math live. Plus
I'll
4
tell
plus
them.
It's like probably about 10 miles more in the end that we had to do, which is like can be a whole day of backpacking if you're expecting to do about 10 miles a day.
Exactly.
And obviously we didn't add any days onto our itinerary because we needed to drive all the way back home. And then probably I was going back to work the next night. But it was just one of those things where it was kind of...
And so one of the things, so before we quite step on trail, we were talking about, our long drive to get there. But this was our longest backpacking trip to date. So we had to plan a little bit differently to... like as far as food and all of those things to get out there. At this point, we were the proud owners of one Bear Vault 500 bear can, but that wasn't gonna cut it. And bear cans are not they're not required in the Wallowas, at least at the time we went. I don't know about right now.
I don't think they are.
Bears live out there, but I don't think that there's a huge
Mostly,
issue.
There's an issue with mice because the Wallowas are actually quite popular. People probably don't have great food storage practices, and also there's mice in the real world. Yeah. And they like human food.
So at this point in our lives, we always use a bear canister wherever we go. We just find
it may change someday. We'll see.
Yeah. At this point, it's an easy way to do food storage, and it's part of our routine, so it's fine. But to go to the Wallowas, we decided to do a bear hang and a bear can, and so we were always trying. And
what was the bear hang bag made out of?
It was made out of.
It was your old sleeping bag.
My stuff sack. Oh my! Yeah. Oh, it wasn't even my stuff sack. It was
your sleeping bag sack that it came in.
Exactly.
So it's larger than a soccer ball.
What did we use as our rope to hang our bear hang? Do you remember?
I think that was our extra cord that came with our tent, tied together multiple times.
Yeah, yes. So this is one of our errors where we didn't actually know what we were doing. We just figured we'd throw it up in a tree and it'd be hopefully safe for mice.
And I think we had first started doing that the year prior, remember when you were trying to throw it up into the tree and it wasn't working, and so you like attached a rock to it and then you almost hit me in the head.
I was trying to get my piece of cord over the branch and I swung the rock around and it like slipped out of my hand and made a beeline for Carrie's head, and it didn't hit her, but she was not happy with me.
I don't think that a lot of people just intuitively know how to do a bear hang correctly, and we certainly did not. So
exactly.
Bring a helmet if you're gonna do that.
Thinking about the food we packed, we brought a good amount of freeze-dried food for our dinners, our trusty oatmeal for breakfast. I think this is maybe one of the first trails where we actually leaned into tuna and tortillas. And then we were so pumped. This year was the year of trail chocolate milk.
Yes. So if you know us, we're Dutch, which really probably
Big
doesn't have
girls.
much to do with anything. We love milk,
Oh
cheese, ice cream, milk, and I love chocolate milk. And I had come to this place in my life where I was like, what could possibly be better than a crisp, cold chocolate milk at the end of a long day? And I think that, had we already gone to the table at this time?
I think we had, yeah.
So we'd started just bringing them backpacking with us, and we'd stick them in snowbanks and cool them down.
Pump the brakes real quick. We would use the Fairlife brand of chocolate milk.
Oh, yeah.
Because it doesn't need to be refrigerated.
And there's a lot of protein.
And it's good milk, and we were just like aghast, like, we can bring milk with us on the trail. And so we had brought it on another trip, and we'd stick it in the snowbanks, and we just thought this was so amazing. So we were like, Rachel, we're gonna bring chocolate milk,
and we brought 3 per person. I want to say, and I think that the way that we packed our bags at the trailhead, Rachel carries her own tent and stuff, and so she doesn't really split between other people because she just has her own stuff. Anyway. I was like, I'll just carry all the chocolate milk so that way the weight's fairer and more even. And it's always like, ooh, it's a weight that's going to go down while we're on trail. So I remember that first day, we'll talk about it, but it was kind of a steep incline and it was not the longest distance and it was kind of warm out and we're starting late in the day. And I remember I felt like I just wanted to cry because my backpack straps were hurting me so much. It was so heavy. I felt like I just needed to sit down. I was like, I don't understand. I feel like I'm going to die from carrying this pack. It's so heavy. And eventually I feel like we came around to the realization that I was maybe carrying between 2.5 to 5 pounds of chocolate milk.
2.5 pounds of chocolate milk
per person.
So you were at just under 8 pounds of milk. So it's safe to say we didn't bring chocolate milk to any other trips, but it was really fun because it was another thing that made this trail just unique. 8 pounds of milk.
Should have just brought in even 10 pounds of chocolate milk. That is funny.
Yeah. We started our trip in the Wallowas on a Wednesday, so that was pretty handy because the Wallowas are actually a really popular area to backpack in Oregon, especially anything in that kind of Wallowa River loop. So we actually got to the trailhead probably at about 1:30 or 2 p.m. Then we still had to kind of get everything situated. Carrie had to pack all the chocolate milks into her bag.
All 8 pounds of them. It's like a baby.
What was really cool, though... It was. What was really cool is that because we got there in the afternoon on a Wednesday, there were a lot of cars at the trailhead, but we were able to park pretty close to the front because it's a weekday. So I guess one of our hacks would be, if you're going to do the Wallowas, I think it's gotten more popular as the years go on. If I was going to go back, I'd probably go back in the fall, in September, because I think that's a pretty quiet time there. Or middle of the week is definitely a hack. So we were happy that we were able to adjust our schedules and take some time off to do that. So we got there. Carrie got all the chocolate milk in her bag. And I think it was about 2:30 p.m. by the time we hit the trail. And at this time, by the AllTrail's math, we thought we were around 5 miles that day. Easy peasy. Yep. But anyways, our ascent for that day was actually about 2,800 feet. So we had a steady uphill on the east, I think it's called the East Fork Wallowa Trail, up to Aneroid Lake, which is where we would make our first camp.
Yeah. And I really just feel so validated because, again, at that time I was like, wow, I'm so weak. What's wrong with me? But I was carrying 7.5 pounds of chocolate milk. I'm still reeling from that revelation. But the Wallowas are kind of funny because they are horse trails. They are horse grade. and there's a ton of switchbacks.
Yeah.
But one thing that you forget about is that a horse trail will have horse poop. Do you remember there was so much horse poop in the Wallowas?
We never had a day without like dodging horse apples
yeah.
for like the whole time.
So,
which good for the
nothing wrong with that. I don't mind having
riding.
horses on the trail. It was just kind of hilarious. Remember, we'd go through these sections and we'd be like, "These horses really hated us today," because it would just be like poop, 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 poop. We were like, "What are they feeding them?
Exactly.
Like a diuretic?" That's not actually diarrhea addict. Okay.
So
anyway,
it was a pretty good grade basically the entire time. Pretty continuous.
The views were pretty. They were I feel like they were quietly pretty, right?
Yeah.
Where it wasn't to the granite yet, but there were some meadows and some rivers.
Foresty at first along a river, and then we kind of switched back up. And something that's unique about this is it is a loop, so we could even see where we would be ending as we started, and then took a left and off we went. And so we were on the switchbacks on the edge of a hill, and we saw some riders coming towards us. So I think it was actually a mule train. And Aneroid Lake, there's actually like a resort up there. And so I think that
which you can only go to if you're on the mule train, by the way.
That's correct. Yeah. So they'll bring guests up via mule.
Which I thought was so cool. I mean, it's like the backcountry is hard to access, and so we saw some people who were maybe a little older, and I was like, that's actually really awesome that they get to go to a place that's, backcountry, still had that feel.
Totally.
Maybe they stayed in like a cabin or something, but I kind of love that they were able to experience Aneroid Lake, which is so pretty.
Honestly.
But so another mistake. We should tally up all the mistakes, but I don't think we even can. The limit does not exist.
We're walking up this switchback and we see the mule train coming, and so I think we didn't even realize that hikers defer to riders at that point.
Well, I think we were just going to anyways because we were like, wow, there's like 9 mules coming. I was going to defer to them.
Well, the guy had to yell. He was like, "Get off the trail."
I think we didn't know they were coming already.
Oh, okay.
Because it was a switchback.
Okay, sure. So he yells like, "Get off the trail." And so then I think I'm like a little flustered because they're coming at us pretty fast, and we're like right on the edge of a switchback. And so Carrie and Rachel, I think they took the uphill, and I was at the corner of the switchback, and I took the downhill part of the trail, and I didn't know any better. So it turns out that mules are not super spatially aware, and they don't really care if they're going to bump into a hiker. Yeah. And I'm standing on the downhill slope, and these mules are just like bonking into me, and I felt like I was close to losing my balance and just going down the hill because
I know. I remember we were watching it kind of like horrified.
It was crazy, and so I was really thankful that I was fine.
Well, and one thing that I will say is about halfway through the mule trail, I feel like the guy in the front was just super grumpy. And whatever, maybe he had a bad day. Maybe he was annoyed by tourists who don't know stuff. Whatever, I get it. But I feel like he kind of had been like, get off the trail, which is fine. I think we were also trying to find footing to get off the trail. And he just wanted us to go fast.
It was kind of just an awkward area. It was rocky and pretty steep.
So I think we would have gotten off either way when we saw there was 9 mules coming that way, but it was like a switchback. We didn't know they were coming towards us.
Yeah.
And he just was like wanting us to go fast. He didn't want to slow him down, whatever. But the lady, so it was like he had a bunch of mules roped up behind him, and then there was a break, and then there was another mule train. And remember that lady said, "Hey, you should go to the other side of the trail because I think the mules are going to knock you off the side of the hill." And then you went over. Yeah. And I appreciated that because it's like, I understand that sometimes when you do a job, it's hard to deal with people who don't know anything and they're annoying and they're tourists and they're just like doing whatever they want. But also, it's just nice when someone can look at someone and say, like, okay, these girls aren't doing it on purpose. They're not trying to be rude. They just didn't know, and I can help them be a little safer.
So good kind of knowledge for any of you guys.
Which we definitely used on the John Muir Trail because there's mule trains there.
Yeah. Anywhere you're hiking, if there's horseback travel or mule trains,
you always
defer to them, and you should always take the uphill side of the trail.
Yeah.
Because
their butt will swing as they go around.
Or the large body of the mule.
Well, and that was the worst part
because
we were right on the switchback.
Exactly.
And that was why their butt was swinging so hard towards you because they were going around the switchback.
It was really scary.
Yeah.
And after the fact, I took a look down the hill and I was like, oh my gosh, that could have really been the end of our trip.
Yeah.
But fortunately, that kind woman did just educate us. And we appreciated that.
That's always something that I try to keep in mind. Not everyone is doing things just to like make you mad or because they hate you. Sometimes it's just like people don't know everything about everything all the time.
Yeah.
What?
And so we walked a little further down the trail, and then I think that's when it kind of started to open up into more meadows.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think we were only 2 miles from Aneroid Lake at that point, and the amount of elevation we had to gain wasn't too crazy. So we did take a seated rest break. And that's how we refer to our rests. It's just funny, right? We do standing rest breaks, seated rest breaks. And so we took a seated rest break, and we had brought cheese for some reason, like Tillamook packaged cheese.
You had it one time on a hike, and it was so amazing.
Yeah.
You always wanted to bring
and
it,
so
we finally
it was
did.
kind of a warm day, and we pulled it out, and it was just like rubbery and so soft. And so I'm pretty sure that was another dairy product that we just carried with us that added extra weight for the rest of the trail.
Yeah, we didn't eat that. It was disgusting.
I couldn't eat it. Yeah. And I just needed to also say that at this point we were probably at about 7,000 feet of altitude, and we'd been up to like 10,000 feet before when we'd climbed the South Sister. But another thing that's unique about the Wallowas in Oregon is you get to get up fairly high in elevation and camp at higher altitudes, which there's not a lot of other places in Oregon where you can do a loop that's at that high of an elevation, which is cool.
Thanks so much for listening to another episode of the Two Sisters on Adventures podcast. If you would like to see photos or videos from the things that we talked about today, you can follow us on Facebook or Instagram. And if you'd like to see when the poster fell on our heads, you can watch this as a video podcast on YouTube. And if you guys would feel in your hearts at all that you would like to rate or review our podcast, we would love that. We appreciate when you guys say kind words about us. And when we get a 1-star review, we just assume that means you thought that 1 star was really good.
Thanks so much for
listening. Bye.